everybody, Mike Pfeiffer with Pfeiffer Hobby Supply. We're back on the N Scale How-To channel, and I have the next video that we're going to do is by Andy Burgess, I believe it is, from Syracuse, Utah. And Andy wanted to know, he says, I have a topic for Mike's How-To series on YouTube. How do you wire Kato Unitrack for DCC? If using super elevated curve track, especially on broad curves, you go a long way between Kato power tracks. How does Mike power the ACT, and how often and in distance does he do it? We're going to look at that, and we're going to look at how I wire turnouts. And a lot of this not only applies to Kato Unitrack, but will apply to other types of track when wiring your layout. So let's get started and take a look. Okay, everybody, we're going to start out here by showing you the two different ways to, well, there's more than two, but there's some homemade remedies. But the first thing is this piece of track right here. I can't remember, I think it's an 042, but I can't remember the number of this piece of track. But anyway, you guys are familiar with it probably. It has a feeder cable that plugs into the bottom of it. And then you would have to put this, you would have to insert this in your layout somewhere, anywhere you wanted feeders. And then on the other side of the layout, you would have to use a piece of this that was the same length to expand the layout the same length. Therefore, I'm not real wild about this. Plus, because this unplugs, it's susceptible to, well, unplugging. I don't know how big of a problem it is, but I figure if I get this in there and I pull on this wire from underneath the layout to do something with it and it unplugs here, then I'm kind of in trouble because I have to lift the track back up to plug it in. So I'm not real fond of these. They do work on a coffee table layout or something, and a lot of guys use them. I just don't use them. What we're going to look at as an alternative is the 24818. These are feeder joiners, and basically all you do is you remove anywhere you have two pieces of track that come together. You remove the two joiners and you replace them with these two joiners. Always remember to put all the whites on one rail and all the blues on the other rail. If you do not do that at every location, you will have a short and your layout will never work. So I'm going to move on and show you how these are installed, and I'm going to show you, just to give you a couple of basics. He wanted to know how far apart to put the feeders. We're going to get to that right now. Okay, guys. I get asked this all the time, how far apart to put the feeders. If you look at it up on the internet, you will find an answer, any answer you want. Some guys are fanatical about doing every joint. I'm not. My layout does not have them at every joint, and it's been here for 6 or 7 years, and I have had no failures at all, and I've ballasted track, I've done all kinds of stuff, painted track. And here, because the layout is small, I'd say my joiners, or not my joiners, but my feeders tend to be about 5 feet apart or so, as a rule. At our club, we have about 1,000 feet of Unitrack, and our feeders are 10 feet apart or more, and we have absolutely no trouble. We've had 2 joiners that we've had to solder out there because of mishandling during the laying of track, but we haven't had any feeder issues. That layout has been up for 3 years. My rule of thumb is 8 to 10 feet apart is more than sufficient. I know that there'll be guys that'll give a bunch of flack about that, but and this applies not only to Unitrack, any layout that I've built. I would recommend 8 to 10 feet apart if you're doing, at least if you're doing DCC. And it's really the same if you're doing DC, only you tend to have more if you're doing DC because you have blocks and so forth. But I also recommend, though, a heavy bus wire around the layout and run those feeders to the lighter weight feeder joiners. I think under here I'm using something like it might be a 12 gauge. I don't know. It's a telephone type wire that I got. It's very heavy. It's very heavy wire. We use the same thing at the fairgrounds, and we have no voltage drop. But anyway, as a general rule, that's what I do. I run a bus wire of a pretty large size and then come off of it with the feeders. It's not something that you know, you couldn't change after a while. If you get a problem, you can always solder a joiner from the top. But anyway, that's my rule of thumb. Now I'm going to show you what I do on all of my turnouts on any type of track. Let's get to that right now. Okay guys, just for simplicity's sake, anytime I wire a layout and to make the wiring foolproof, if you will, what I do is on any turnout, always feed from the single side. Your feed will always come from the single side into a turnout. Whether it be a selective routed turnout, meaning that whichever way you throw the turnout is the way the power throws, or whether it's a non-selective turnout, which means that you have power in both ways, regardless of the way the points are thrown. Okay, here's what I do. I insulate all 4 rails leaving the turnout. I repower the track beyond that with another feeder. My other feeder would be out here somewhere feeding this track. My other feeder would be out here feeding this track. That's the way I do it to save confusion down the road. Okay, and it's really foolproof no matter which type of turnout you use. Okay, that's just the way I do it. So if you're designing a layout, design your feed to come into the turnout and power away from the turnout. You insulate all 4 of these. The only exception might be is if you had another turnout attached to this or another turnout attached to this. Then you have to depend on the power that comes through the turnout to power the next turnout, because you may not be able to put a feeder wire in here. You may or may not. You may or may not want one in there. But as a rule, this is the way I do it, okay? Saves problems down the road. So when designing a layout, always put your insulators on the outside or the way side of your turnout and refeed those tracks beyond. Just makes life way simpler and way easier to understand. Let's take a look at some other applications of track here and see what we can come up with. Okay guys, I'm just going to show you another little close-up view of the 818, the 24818, which is the feeder joiner. This is what it looks like. You basically have 2 joiners, wires attached to the bottom. These can be also made, as I've said. And then they've got 35 inches of cord, and they've got a connector on the end. Now, say you have a section where you have multiple, you want to put multiple feeds in, because let's say you have a yard or something, and it's not the 10-foot apart rule, obviously. Kato makes a product, and it's called a 3-way splitter. There again, I'm not up on the number of it. I can't remember what the number is once again, but you can certainly look them up. It's a 3-way splitter basically. It has a wire on it, and this wire has the same plug as the regular terminal joiner has on it. You can use it or not use it. You can cut that off and cut the end off as I did, and then you can wire that together or wire this to your bus. But if you want to come out and you don't want to make a bunch of bus attachments, you can take your individual feeder wires and plug them into this guy. And this is exceptionally handy in a yard situation. That way you don't have to make a whole poop load of connections to your bus wire. So this is another option. All this does is multiple that into 3 wires, and it makes it easy to just a plug-in situation. But that's just a couple more pieces. I don't know. I think that's pretty much the coverage of the ways to feed. I did want to mention one other thing, and that is there's another piece of track that has feeders on the bottom of it, similar to the single track one, that's for the double track. Okay, but there again, I prefer the feeder joiners on each of the two tracks, and that's the way my layout is done. So anyway, I don't know what else I could tell you about making these connections. These same things can be done on any kind of track, Pico track, Atlas track, any kind of track. All these same things apply, just different products. There's certainly rail joiners with wires attached to them for Pico, for Atlas, for any of the other track brands. In any event, they're all expensive, so you may want to go to soldering wire to the track or to the joiner or whatever. One other thing that comes up here in my mind is soldering track. Guys, a lot of guys are convinced that you need to solder some of this track, solder these joints. On Unitrack, I don't think that's necessarily true unless, like I stated, you find a place where you've manhandled the track too much, which was the case at the fairgrounds out here, and the joiner has lost its shape, therefore it's not making good contact. But what I recommended out there was every time the guys got the track where you wanted it, buy a package of a bunch of rail joiners, put a new rail joiner on it before you put the track down permanently. If you're messing with the track a lot before you put it down. We did not do that in some cases, and those are the ones we had to solder. Now, the exception to that is my Helix back here. Any of you that saw the Helix video, what I did is I got all of the track straightened up, and I soldered every joint within that Helix just because I didn't want the track coming apart, and so I could handle it and get it screwed. If you remember how I did it, I screwed the track down into the Helix because I had the track all assembled in an accordion, and I screwed it down. Anyways, that was the exception to soldering track. So anyway, guys, I hope this video helped you, and I I hope that I answered Andy's question here. And if anybody has any questions, go ahead and post here. And once again, don't forget to email us and send us your ideas for a video, and we'll try to get to it. Some of them get a little bit too involved, and I like to keep them a little shorter, but we'll try and get to it. And that's it for today, guys. Well, that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this this edition of the N Scale How-To, and don't forget to submit your questions and your video requests. The link is down below, and I've always forgotten in the previous videos to be sure to remind you to be sure and send in those requests. So I hope you're enjoying the N Scale How-To channel, and we'll see you guys the next time.